Hey there, welcome to the GSPN Mega Milwaukee Bucks Free Agency Preview Podcast. The Bucks have several of their own free agents who are potentially hitting free agency. Plus, of course, there are dozens and dozens of players around the league. So let's talk about the Bucks' entire free agency outlook. I am Ty Windish, joined as always by Rohan Kadi of the Eurostep Plus, Adam McGee, and Jordan Tresky of the Win in Six podcast. Fellas, how is it going?
It's kind of hazy, Ty.
It is a little hazy. Not for you, Adam.
No, clear skies. Clear skies here.
Yeah, here in Wisconsin, we're dealing with the smoky air due to the Canada wildfires. So make sure you guys all stay safe. Make sure you mask up if you go outside. It's good.
It's like a Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson podcast. It's all the smoke out there.
Jordan, your life is like entirely smoke right now.
Yeah, it is.
At work,
it's actually better. It's better to breathe in a smoker than it is walking around Milwaukee. That is a thought I had today multiple times.
There's gonna be some folks who think Jordan indulges in a certain recreational activity now.
No,
let's let him dream, or not. Bucks free agency. So we're going to start with Milwaukee's own free agents. There's like 6 or 7 of them. There's like 5 of them that I think are actually, maybe 6 of them that are actually important players on the team that we can discuss, and we will. Start with the most obvious one, and one that I think actually, paradoxically maybe, won't take a while to discuss because it seems like all the reports are on the same page. I think we're all going to be on the same page too. Khris Middleton opts out. Kind of silently opts out, by omission of his player option for next year, worth $40 million. And we all thought, the reporting all seems to be, that is so he could sign a contract with a lesser annual value, but more guaranteed dollars. I believe the number we've seen, this is from Mike Scotto at Hoops Hype, was 4 years, 130 million-ish. So that's what I've been kind of penciling in as a base point. Of course, we'll see what it actually ends up being, but it does seem like the Bucks are going to retain Khris, as we've discussed every time Khris has come up for the last X years. They won't have cap space. Khris is a great player, since, as we've discussed over the last 2 years almost now, led them to a championship as their main ball handler in pick and roll actions. A great player to bring back, especially if he is willing to take a little less each year to help the Bucks dodge the second apron. I mean, who wants to jump in? What else is there to say about Khris Middleton's free agency here?
Retain talent, because you can't replace it.
If something unexpected happens here, or with the next guy we'll talk about, Bucks are in big trouble. The window that we've been dealing with it wouldn't necessarily be closed, but it'd be pretty damn close to it. So it's as simple as you got to keep Khris. You've no other option. We'll see what happens down the line with Khris over the course of his contract, but yeah, you've got to do all that you can to bring him back, because otherwise you're guaranteed to be worse. There isn't a path to, we'll let him go and we'll replace him with a player who's even like 2/3 of the player, half the player. Do you want the vet min in Khris Middleton's slot, or do you want Khris Middleton? That's pretty much where we're at here.
Yeah, every time there's a big free agency decision that Khris Middleton has to make, it's always about the Bucks. Or what is he gonna leave? Is he gonna want big money and all this stuff? And the Bucks have paid him handsomely over the course of his career. He's also taken on team-friendly deals back in 2015 when he re-signed originally, and then obviously I know it was near the max. It wasn't a full max, but still very big money that he's out of his deal right now. But all the noise about, is he going to go to this place, any insert team with that has a lot of cap space during the summer that he's a free agent, could they perhaps lure him away? And it's all just external noise. That's kind of where we're at with Khris. And I, again, would be incredibly shocked if all the reporting that we're hearing from multiple outlets, Hoops Hype, Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports had an update today that all signs are pointing to Khris coming back to Milwaukee. I just think it has and will be the most likely option on that front.
Also, like, he was in on the head coaching interviews. Like, we know the
it's
deal.
not like he's his, I guess, I don't know, input isn't being valued too. Because for all the talk about Giannis, he's still, Khris is still being accounted for in these huge decisions.
Yeah. So definitely not concerned. And just quickly, the cat nerd thing. Bucks have full bird rights on Khris, so they can pay him more than anyone. They can give him one extra year than anyone else. They can't get outbid. I mean, could you say, could someone give more than the Bucks would feel comfortable paying Khris with the second apron? Potentially. There's like 6 teams with cap space. Again, though, it seems like he's not really testing the waters, although he is hitting free agency, more that he's declining that option so he can negotiate a different deal. So we're all aligned there. They also have bird rights on Brook Lopez. And I want to throw to Adam first, because I've actually talked about this with Jordan on our pod after the draft, with Rohan earlier this week. Adam, have not gotten to talk to you, I think, in a while about the big fella. Again, I think we're all going to be pretty aligned here, but there is more smoke about Brook going elsewhere. What are not just your thoughts on what the Bucks should do? There's nice little acting by Jordan if you're watching on YouTube right now. But what the Bucks will do and what Brook will do this offseason.
Well, what do you think I'm going to say? What the Bucks should do here? Look, it's again, this is the concern I have at this point heading into the next few days, because it does seem like the smoke is real. And if he gets a big offer, and an offer that's really challenging for the Bucks based on whatever the structure of Chris's deal ends up being, like that number you put out there, 4 years, 130 million that Mike Scotto might be mentioning. Like in an ideal world, the Bucks would want to front load a Middleton deal to give them more wiggle room, maybe beyond that, but you might have to backload it depending what Brook's number is. Like we could actually see that go one way or the other and then be forced into a spot that isn't necessarily ideal and planning for the future. But is there even a future if your kind of present peters out? You don't have a way to get back to the level you're at for the next couple of seasons. So I would say I'm concerned. I don't know if Brook has any real desire. Like it's very tough to get a read on him, because it's not the kind of talking that he generally does and lays it out. He certainly seems to have loved his time with the Bucks, loved being on a competitive team, and they've been the best years of his career, I think, in terms of what he will ultimately be remembered for, even though his legacy has been kind of carved out in New Jersey/Brooklyn based on what he did there as a scorer. It's tough, because part of this also is the Adrian Griffin of it all, and what kind of discussions might have been had or will be had on how is Brook's role viewed, or what is the system going to be. There could be more money on the table from elsewhere, and he could also be kind of presented with a vision of what the new iteration of the Bucks are going to be that isn't going to fit his skill set as well, or maybe just work as well for him at his age. I don't know. That's all very tough. And I think the Bucks have to be very careful about it, because, again, I think this is as simple as if you lose Brook Lopez, I don't know if the Bucks are the kind of team they need to be. That's kind of detached from whether the best version of the Bucks is one that is reliant on Brook Lopez or playing drop or anything like that. This is about pure talent. They didn't have enough talent ultimately, one way or another, last year to get the job done. They'd be getting significantly worse, and in an area of the roster where I think they are at their weakest. And I hate to drone on about this because I've been doing it for years. Maybe at a time it was closer to concern trolling, but now, like, this is the situation. It's real. The Bucks have kind of let this sneak up on them. And it feels like they're at a place where, I don't know, we could maybe talk, or not on this pod, although maybe these kind of things could happen in the next while. Like we talk about, well, what's Bobby's future? How does that factor into, or where the Bucks might be at on Bobby at this point versus where they were in the past? But I think the reality of it, and with a new coach coming in, is this is an area of the roster where things are very much in flux. There's not going to be an easy fix to get it to where it needs to be. And if you were to lose Brook, I don't know. I just think that's too big of a gap for them to be able to plug with basically what's at their disposal. It might require much more radical roster moves, which again applies to Khris as well. But Brook is the one where, as you said, significant smoke. We'll see. Maybe it is. I know, Ty, you have been on this block for a while and speculated just the Rockets are like this kind of boogeyman figure that
Jordan's block. It's Jordan's
is
thing.
Jordan's block.
Jordan's more confident in that take than I think anyone. I'm taking it from Jordan.
I think that's true, but Brook
That's
might be the
true.
guy they actually want.
5 players in today's Jake Fisher piece.
But that's that's every agent can jump on it. But one of those guys is going to be real. And it might just be Brook, because he does kind of make a lot of sense, even in terms of where they're at on their own roster and where they might like an older veteran center for a couple of years to help with development, to really shape something. A leader, a kind of a proven winner at this point, a good personality. Like I can see why it makes sense for them. I don't know about how it would feel for Brook. I wonder also, is there something interesting to, like, he could talk with his brother Robin about these kind of moves and about what is it like at this point in your career to go from one extreme of being, okay, I'm trying to be on playoff teams or contending teams, to then I'm getting paid handsomely to kind of be the adult in the room here. Robin seems to have embraced that. I don't know, but again, they're hard guys to get a real read on that.
Did Robin have the other choice?
No, not to this extent.
So maybe talk to Al Horford about it, because I think it's pretty clear where he fell on the spectrum of get paid to be the adult on the room versus be on an actual.
For sure, but Brook can ask Robin, okay, you're on the Bucks, and then you ended up right back in kind of a situation he'd been in for a lot of his career. It's like, what is that like? You had that 1 year where the goals are very different. Is that something where it's like, oh, great, this is what it is now? Maybe personality-wise, those two guys are actually fine with that. I don't know. It definitely scares me at this point, because I think if they lose him, I don't know. I don't want to be too down on it, but I don't see the clear and obvious path to the Bucks being the team they need to be in the next 2 to 3 years. And it would be pretty catastrophic. And part of that is because they probably should have got ahead of this. And if there was a succession plan or an evolution even in place of what the roster was going to look like when this kind of day comes, that would have been one thing. I guess they probably also weren't accounting for Brook putting in one of his best seasons of his career at this point. And that might have even slowed down kind of where they were at in this thought process coming off the injury. You wouldn't be thinking, okay, well, fast forward 12 months, this guy could get major offers from elsewhere that, one, are going to be a problem for us price-wise. And yeah, we'll see. I don't feel great about it. I'd like to think that he's going to stick around, but the Bucks could be such a different proposition for him under Adrian Griffin that there could be more to that already that he knows that would have him inclined to listen more keenly to options elsewhere too.
What do we think the Rockets offer him as a max? Like, what if you're Houston? What are you giving to Brook Lopez at this stage of his career?
It's going to be short. I'll tell you that, because they have 8 players on rookie contracts right now. Like, I don't think they're going to give him 4 years unless it's steeply declining.
You think like 2 years, maybe like, I don't know, like
60 million?
60?
Does Brook want 4 years anyway? Is also like, if he could get a really rich 2 years, he's already 35. That might be kind of, yeah, you know what? I don't need 4 years at a, you know, if they can give him 60 million in over 2 to 3 years, versus if that's the Bucks being like, here, we'll give you 4 years, he might just be inclined, okay, money's the same. It's actually, you know, in Texas, you'll make out better with that side of the deal too. And I don't want to play that long. I don't want to be 39. I don't know. It's a really tough spot. The Bucks also, I mean, in an ideal world, you're not giving any of these guys contracts beyond when Giannis could be gone. That is not the world that we're living in. They're going to have to give Khris years. Simple as. If Brook wants years, they'll have to do that. It's hard to see the Bucks coming out on top in the financial stakes, though, if the Rockets thing is real. Like, it could be that the Rockets could just be the smokescreen for Brook. I have a feeling that he might be the real one. If it seems like the most persistent, one of the earliest names that's been out there for the Rockets, and I'm sure every other agent in the NBA has been, well, I don't even want to say smart enough, because it's pretty obvious, to try and get their client linked with the Rockets ever since.
I think it's Van Vliet too. Van Vliet's one of the first mentioned to them now. I think that's a very real thing as well.
Yeah.
But so here's like the Rockets. If you get Fred Van Vliet and Brook Lopez, congrats on winning 39 games. Like,
it's better than where they've been.
Is it? You have a bunch of lottery picks. Develop young players. Alperen Şengün is like this really intriguing player. Hey, here, you can play 14 minutes a night. I don't understand it for them. I really don't get it. I don't know why you amass all this young talent to then sign guys and then one of James Harden. Whatever. It's fine, I guess.
We have seen teams in the West, though, kind of cobble together rosters that are weird and not great. And if you sometimes you catch the right mix of, okay, we've got good older players, we've got some young stuff, and it works in a way, or it even works temporarily. Like, I think they haven't got what they wanted development wise out of their young guys in recent years. That could be just that you made the wrong picks.
Well, they also have a joke of a basketball organization there, and their head coach
for sure
was a punchline the whole time he was coaching there.
But I would understand then if at a certain point they're like, what we're doing is not working for development. We need to put better players around these guys and try to start developing winning habits with some of the young players we have. And if we're still not going to be good enough, then we're still not going to be good enough. We'll still have good picks, but we need to change the culture. And I would agree that they need to change the culture if they want to get the best out of the young players they have and young players they may add. To be clear, I'm playing devil's advocate to your question somehow here, but I don't think it's like, I do get it. I get why at some point an organization might look at it and be like, maybe this is the way we should try, because I don't think just bottoming out year after year after year is going to work for them. Particularly if you've got, like, I don't know, the Thunder doing it, for example, a much smarter organization, in my opinion. I think there's better people involved. If that's the game you're going to play, I think the Rockets are going to lose out on that, and honestly have done in recent years. Yeah,
well, we'll see. But I think we're all generally in agreement. It's a little scary, but we'd like Brook back. I mean, it's very important. And I think to your point, Adam, about the fit with Adrian Griffin and everything, Griffin shouted out Brook as one of the best, the stars on the team, whatever, in the press conference. And I think I've seen some from not Brook's perspective, but from the Bucks' perspective, the idea like, oh, maybe you don't want to pay him too much, get out too early versus too late. And, if the scheme is going to go toward more aggressive defense, then maybe he's not a fit. Who's your center then? I mean, you didn't explicitly state the question, Adam, but like, that's what you have to think about if you say that, because there's not like, oh yeah, here's the 26-year-old, rangier center who isn't as big or as good at drop, but really fits that scheme. It's certainly not on the roster. I don't know if
you don't have one.
Exists in free agency either. So it's not as easy to just be like, well, we'll just go with the center that fits then. It's that guy's not really there. So as Rohan said, well, with the Khris part, don't lose your talent. Keep your talent here. Is it possible there could be a sign and trade? Yes, but I don't really see, like, if it's Houston, why are they giving up stuff? They have $60 million in cap space. Like, they don't need to accommodate that. So I don't think that's all that likely, or again, you're not going to get back what you're losing, clearly. I mean, that doesn't really exist there unless Houston's really going ape to get Brook Lopez, which I just don't see happening.
it's at some point, like, you're right, in just this ideal world, you get out too early rather than too late. Getting out too early here, though, will make your team worse.
Yeah.
And you'll
very noticeable.
you'll have Giannis being like, "Hey, why are we so bad?"
And also,
and you'll be like, "Oh, well, we got out early on Brook. We didn't want to have the wrong side of the deal." And I was like, "Well, that's great. I won't be here for when the wrong side of that deal will be in that case, because we're now at 44 win team."
Yeah. To that point on Giannis as well, I think as much as this is the summer of Adrian Griffin for the Bucks, in a lot of ways it's the summer of leaning into what Giannis wants to do. I think that was pretty clear with the reporting on the coaching search and pick. Giannis, more than maybe any other Buck, has lauded Brook in the last 2 years. I mean, when they had to play without him, Giannis really wouldn't shut up about how much he missed him and how much he doesn't like playing center. So for anyone who thinks, oh, Giannis and Bobby, like we saw, that was a bad defensive team relative to where the Bucks should be. Clearly not a good enough championship, or not a good enough defensive team to win a championship. Giannis loves Brook and loves playing with Brook. So even if they're going to change the defense, I would be pretty surprised if not say mandate, but the message from Giannis is, Brook's got to be there, because I don't want to play center I can't and I won't play center for 82 games.
It's not even just obviously this is Brook's bread and butter, but it's the offensive thing of like, okay, we know what we've seen Giannis and 4 shooters and all that stuff, but that is the base offense that they have. Like, they're not going to really reinvent the wheel in terms of like how the Bucks will ultimately function. Do they need a little bit more ball handling, shot creation, all that stuff? Yeah. But I think not enough is being focused on like, what is a Bucks team that is going to look like without Brook Lopez offensively too? Because it's not. I don't think
they didn't have enough offensively with him. So imagine losing him.
Yeah.
Bucks, please keep Brook Lopez. Okay, Rohan. Let's just start. We'll go around and just pick players from the remaining pool now. Those were clearly the big 2. I think now we can go in almost any order. Please be responsible and think about just the roles and try to go in somewhat descending order, but ultimately the pick is yours, Rohan.
Are we talking Bucks free agents?
Yes.
Let's talk about, I think the most important player not named Khris or Brook. Let's talk about Bossman 99.
Okay, sure. That's,
Important?
okay. Go ahead, Rohan. State your case.
I'm going to mute myself to make this easier.
Here's the thing about Bossman 99. The Bucks have his full bird rights. They traded for him. Do you think that the Bucks are going to make the same mistake again that they did with PJ Tucker, where John Horst talked about after he traded for PJ Tucker? It's like, hey, we have his full bird rights. We're not going to waste that opportunity. We're not going to squabble. Are they going to do that again? I hope so. I really hope they do it again.
Wow.
I do not want to.
Wow,
You thought I was going to zig, but
You had me going there, Rohan.
You thought I was going to zig, but I said, get this guy off my team. It's just like, no, We're good. You don't need to do that just for like a trade asset. You don't need to.
It can still be a trade asset. There's still teams over the cap who may want boss man, and you can still sign and trade him somewhere.
Yes, exactly. You could do that, but
that's fine.
If you want to retain him purely to be a trade asset, it's not worth it, especially with the Bucks, depending on Khris and Brook, their new deals, hopefully, how close they're going to be to the second apron. Yeah. Why do you need to take that risk on a guy who was unplayable in the playoffs for you? Why? You don't need to take the risk.
I'm glad you said that, because I was the one pushing I think it makes a little sense to try.
Yeah, you sure were.
Well, listen, in any previous year, I would still be there, because I do think trying to hit on wings is a good idea. And if it was just ownership money, I wouldn't care. I think I'm pretty consistent with that stance. But it's not anymore. And I think dodging the second apron enough to use the mini MLE, which we'll get to more in our other free agent discussion, and just staying below it generally, especially like this year and going into next year to open up that 7th-year draft pick thing, which is frankly like the weakest, most cowardly CBA provision I could even imagine, to punish a team 7 years in the future for retaining their homegrown talent to try and win championships. CJ McCollum, seriously, like, I don't even have words. And all the Celtics that are on that committee. Of course it's Boston's fault, but and they knew if they're playing for our team will never be in the second apron. We're never even in the first apron, so this is fine. But now I did the calcs, and if it's like 45-ish combined million to Khris and Brook, you can basically keep like one other free agent for more than vet min of the returning guys, and then you can use the mini mid level and then still stay below the second apron. So if you retain Boss Man for like $10 million a year or even like $8 million a year, it really takes that away, especially if you're trying to keep anyone else. So for that reason, the new ideal scenario is like I think Cleveland is so scarred, but to some team like Cleveland want to send over a second round pick, something in the future for a sign and trade. That's my new hope. I would not keep him on a real contract. I would rather go to the free agency route and not tie myself to Boss Man. 9-9. Lowercase, according to Rohan, until he proves otherwise.
I feel like that's deserved.
I agree.
Yeah. And you also run into the issue, I mean, not to sort of poo-poo your sign and trade idea, but it's like, what teams are going to hard cap themselves for Boss Man?
Yeah.
I'll do backflips if the Bucks get something from Jae Crowder and don't have Jae Crowder on the roster. That's honestly, that sounds like a dream. I won't do my whole thing again because I did it a few pods ago. The whining, that's it. I was done then. It's like, you did not show up. You were terrible. And then you were the first guy to complain coming out of it after, like, really how your time... part of it too, I think, reframes like the Suns of it all for me as well, and him sitting out that length of time, because I think it's very easy to view it one way in that moment, but then he comes out and he looks terrible, and then he's immediately the first guy out to complain about everything around him. Like, yeah, you know what? Just miss me with this. There's no need for it. I don't think it benefits the Bucks in any way, particularly if we're gonna have as much of a new era as possible. I'm open beyond the obvious ones. If the Bucks want to really reset and they're maybe dealing with more vet min guys than ever, but they can pick out some young flyers and try to develop, I'm good with that this year. Let's not keep guys around who there is no clear and obvious reason to do so. And I think he very much fits that bill. And even post-draft, and I mean the direction they went in the draft, not like for like, but also makes me feel there's even less utility for Jae Crowder, because he might just block some minutes that could be going to different kind of options or shape the rotation in a way that I don't think it should be. So get him all the way out of here.
I clap my hands and get rid of the Jae Crowder of it all. I don't care if you recruit anything of him, great. If he just leaves without getting anything for him, great. I just do not see any point in him coming back. I think we'll see with a full offseason, because he had plenty more off seasons to be on the sidelines and not have to play basketball. It's very hard the season ended, but we'll see how much he has left in the tank. But it didn't work out, and you don't go further than that sunk cost kind of thing.
Also, in addition to money, there is a roster spots math you have to start doing at a certain point. I mean,
yes,
we already talked about the core four. Bobby and Grayson still under contract. Pat's under contract is 8. Then you've got Marjon Beauchamp not going anywhere anytime soon, is 9. We'll get to Jevon Carter. He has a player option. He may not even be gone, but that's 10. If both rookies are on the roster, that's 12. And then we haven't gotten to a couple other Bucks free agents or anyone incoming. And again, in this second apron dodging thing, I'm assuming the 15th spot is left open now to help stay under that like 180-ish number. So you're already down only a couple of spots, and that has to factor in as well. So yeah, I'm out. Jordan, who do you want to talk about next on the Bucks free agent list?
Let's go Ingles.
Okay, Ingles. What do you think, Jordan?
I think my tune has changed with Ingles, because originally I would have easily welcomed him back, and I thought he played well. Yeah, he has defensive shortcomings. Certainly post ACL injury, but he largely was what the Bucks needed. It's a shame that things ended the way they did because we didn't really get to see the full breadth of everything like that. But when push came to shove in that Heat series, we just saw how much of a liability it is. And I mean, that's gonna apply to any player of his caliber and just the class of player he is. He's a very good player, but he's a role player, and how long his future goes on, it's going to be treated as such financially. It's also something that is not easily replaced because just having another ball handler and guy that can hit shots and create shots for others and all that stuff, like as much as we glommed on to the times that he's got the chemistry with Giannis, he certainly had chemistry with Brook, all these things, it was only scratching the surface, and then the bottom fell out with how the season ended. And part of me just wants to be like, you know what? I think the Bucks largely are going to keep with the main guys, and I would consider Ingles one of them. The other part of me looks at how this free agent class might be, and you look at other teams and just every team is going to want to use or need a Joe Ingles, frankly. I just wonder if the Bucks are going to be over the top with willing to kind of be like, hey, we'll tab you as the mini MLE guy if that's how contracts are structured and everything like that. So my tune has changed. I think he ends up leaving. I'm probably 60-40 in that direction. That's changed over the last couple of weeks. So that's where I stand on the Eagles front.
Will I go? He's outside of Khris and Brook. He's the guy I want back. The reason for that is this team is deeply, deeply lacking in playmakers, in people who can create. And this free agent point guard class is absolutely terrible, and even worse in the pool that the Bucks are going to be operating in. So I have real concerns. I mean, we should have concerns anyway, I feel, about some elements of the Bucks offense with the way the roster is shaping up. I think in an ideal world, again, outside of Brook and Khris, I'm kind of, part of me just wants to clear out all of these older guys and see the Bucks lean into a more vibrant, high energy, athletic identity and what the rest of the roster is filled out in. This is the one exception. I don't think it's ideal, but I don't know where you're going to get someone who will be able to spell you some quality ball handling, some quality creation off the bench. And I think it's a reflection of the tough spot the Bucks find themselves in free agency. And again, maybe we're not all in agreement on this, although I feel like it's becoming clear, and particularly after drafting 2 wings, you're kind of in a spot where it's like the concerns for this team for me are at guard and at center. And I think without quality guard options, there are a couple out there and maybe they can pull it off and this is negated. I'll probably talk about a couple in a while. But that might be easier said than done because it is weak, and I think that market will be quite competitive in the same way that center will be competitive. They might need to keep him more than any of the other players kind of in the mix. I can see the case that will be made, and I know it will be made for another player who is an actual guard. But I value the offensive ability that Joe Ingles brings to the table a whole lot more than what they're getting out of any of the other outgoing free agents at this point.
Just feels like a regular season move to make because I just don't think they're going to put the ball in a role player's hands in the playoffs, which is why I think Ingles was so not useful because they basically just used him as a shooter. And
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
What is the playoff option they're getting here?
Well, we'll talk about the mini MLE options a little bit later in the podcast.
I don't believe is like, I'll get out in front of that. I don't believe that's there. Like, I think
I
these
think
are
there is, yeah.
okay.
I mean, we probably saw him at the most athletic we're going to see him, and I just don't know how many minutes he could realistically get in a playoff series, especially, the other thing that Rohan and I talked about with this is, we're bringing back Khris too. And I think, if Khris is 5 years younger and 4 injuries ago, then maybe you can talk me into Ingles. Both of those guys just gives you such a lack of lateral movement that I think it's just hard to play the kind of defense you need to play in the playoffs if you're playing one or both of those guys pretty much all the time. So for that reason, I am out. I would rather look elsewhere and try to get younger. Again, is there a team out there that wants him enough to send you something for him? That'd be cool to kind of replenish the stock of, smaller draft assets. Can you maybe spin something around and then go get one of Washington's 4 point guards? That's kind of interesting. I don't love how much money you have to give up, but if you're doing a sign and trade, maybe that mitigates that a little bit. We'll see. I think there could be something there, but I would, I don't want to get creative and replace Brook because I really don't think they can. I'm okay to take the risk here, bet on internal development and more other players taking the ball handling, # let Terry cook to keep the offense rolling. I would rather part ways with Ingles, even though regular season he certainly was helpful when he was healthy as a playmaker for the Bucks.
Yeah, I think it would be a regular season move for sure if they bring him back, because I don't know. He would just have to be a break glass in case of emergency guy in the postseason, considering it's like what we saw. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. It was just sort of in the middle, and it's like, do you want to sort of commit that money to someone who's just sort of for you in the postseason? And a lot of that's probably not his fault. It's just a consequence of the roster construction, but it happens whether it's his fault or not. And I don't know. It's just more of do you want to commit to it just being like a coin flip, whether he helps you or not? And I don't know. Maybe you can try other things elsewhere. I wouldn't be opposed to him if he wants to come back and bring Chase on him in. Sure, why not?
Well, I think that's a possibility. I was going to ask that question. Is everyone just kind of that's out? If he likes it, that's kind of the stage in his career. He's had good deals. I don't think that's completely out of the question for the difference in money we'd be talking about if the Bucks were to give him an offer.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do think he can make money for you to see. He showed enough to be like, hey, I know I suffered an ACL injury, but he came back sooner than we thought, played better than we thought. And yeah, again, he's going to be a liability come playoff time. He's not going to play as many minutes as he would during the regular season, all that stuff. I just look at this free agent class and he's no different than a lot of the guys that are in the MLE status.
I mean,
the guys that can swing.
He got this contract while still out with the ACL.
Exactly.
And, the Cavs gave Ricky Rubio, I think, the same contract, same situation. Yes. There's an appetite out there, and this is like you said, much less of a swing. I agree, Jordan. I mean, I think there's probably not the full one, the $12 million, but the mini MLE or that kind of money. Yeah, but that's the thing. To Adam's point, Ingles' min is probably around $3 million at this point. The Bucks, so his salary situation, they have the non-bird exception, which allows you to go 150% of what he made last year. Again, we don't know what the new CBA is yet. Maybe it's changed, but he made $6 million last year, so they could pay him up to $7 million. That for me is a no-go because that probably does take you out of mini MLE territory. I would rather take that swing, but if he's willing to come back for less, then all of a sudden I think that's more interesting, and I'm much more open to that because he is a useful player offensively. There's no question about that.
I'm not suggesting he should be the mini MLE. I'm not really interested in the Bucks outgoing free agents beyond this point. I'm just not crazy about it at all. And I get entirely what you're saying about the playoffs, but I think that's the kind of spot we find ourselves in come June, July, where we're building out this fantasy idea of what a playoff rotation is going to look like, where we know that the practicality, even for really good teams, is often more cobbled together. And like, the Bucks were the example of this. They won a championship with a super cobbled together rotation. My concern is just some of the problems we saw with someone like Jrue Holiday. My concern when you bring up Khris Middleton and Ingles together, that's entirely valid. But part of Ingles for me would be, well, what if Khris isn't out there for a long stretch of the season? Or if you're going into playoff games without Khris, it's a different kind of problem. Like, by no means is it perfect. I just think the Bucks are way, way past the point of solutions that aren't going to be highly flawed. I look forward to the names you're bringing to the table, Ty. But I do think, like, whatever they do here, if they have the perfect offseason and we all feel really good coming out of it, they kind of did something like that last year, and we saw how that panned out. And then it's just not that simple. It's going to hinge on the top 6 to 7 guys, and we don't know what an Adrian Griffin rotation looks like, far less an Adrian Griffin playoff rotation. But for as much as I understand the point and where you're coming from on a regular season signing, I couldn't get hung up on that right now, because yeah, they might have to be a pretty flawed team in the playoffs, but one that can grind out games. And I think there's a real deficiency in creativity and in playmaking on this team. And I think they may get better defensively, and they may lean into some Raptors-like defensive identity if we're to read way too much into the draft picks at this point, which I do think would be to read way too much into that. But the offense is honestly pretty scary, particularly based on what we saw in the playoffs. And I will continue, like I feel like I was for a lot of last season, to be more worried with the offense than the defense. So I'm thinking vet min, which is very optimistic.
Yeah, vet min.
But I wonder
of offense, that's fine.
And I agree with Jordan too, and you said it as well, Ty. Like, he probably has other options out there, but he is at the point in his career where he might just be like, yeah, there's more money there, but I'd rather be here for another year.
He did seem to love it.
They really embraced him. I know, they had an autism night. They did redesign their rooms and stuff like that. Like, that's not just lip service and everything like that. And to your point, like, I do think that he could really benefit from Terry Stotts being on board, and, just seeing someone that has such a creative mind offensively. Like, I would for sure think that Terry Stotts would be like, yeah, I could probably use Joe Ingles, to get these plays rolling. Yeah, he's probably the hardest one to kind of consider, just because it's like, we look at the age, we look at the injuries, and it's like, you're turned off by that stuff. But it's like, that's still a productive player, given everything that we had talked about him for the last, 10, 15 minutes. And it's like, I will just keep going to the old adage: do not pass up on good players when you have them. That's it.
Let's have the Jevon Carter. What do you got?
I'd like if he made like infinitely less dumb mistake, like
the fouls.
Intentionally dumb
the stupid fouls. I hate it. I hate it.
And just like, he's a liability on defense too.
Yeah. But again, if it's vet min, if it's vet min, sign me up.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
Sign me up for vet min. If it's anything above vet min, I think I'll pass.
Let's have the Jevon Carter conversation. Adam was clearly throwing subs left and right. Javon's mom.
That wasn't gonna be my pick for who we talked about next.
Oh, well, who are you thinking?
We could do it, because the one I was going to bring up next will derail the pod for about an hour. So,
oh no, he's a Myers Leonard stan.
No, who else is left to?
Goran?
No, I think it's time to kill our darlings, and I think TA needs to hit the road.
But what does that have to do with the guy?
I'm gonna leave.
We're working through the free agents.
Well, yeah, but I think you said something about other guards on the roster. That's why I was. I'm talking generally, just with all of those guys. My feeling on this, we'll be moving on quickly, or maybe we won't, because Ron might reappear and start shouting at me. Like, the guy's 31. There's been no use for him for quite a while. He says good things to Giannis.
I don't care. Giannis has to grow up, and if he wants the best chance of the Bucks winning, it should probably involve his brother moving on. Because as you said, if they're going to be a 14-man roster, and you've just drafted 2 second-round picks. You've got Marjan, who played a little, but not a lot, isn't quite ready. Carrying another passenger is just, it can't continue at this point. So time has come. Just let's move on. Let's get serious about it.
Could use some more former players on the coaching staff. There we go. Split the difference.
He could get the Adrian Griffin, start.
Yeah.
Scott Skiles calling him up on the final day of training camp. Or you could go and make some money in Europe again and actually play.
I've always wondered if it wouldn't be Bucks, if Thanasis would want that at some point. Because he was good when he played in Europe. Played a lot. Yeah. I mean, I would be fine with that. Rohan's gone. I don't know.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
I'm just
if there's no counter, we could just move on. It seems like we're all in agreement.
I mean, I have said if Giannis says they need to roster all the brothers, I would do it. But I mean, if they're able to get away from that, I'm also fine with that. Clearly,
like I in all seriousness on this, I do think obviously we're reaching a point where it's about pleasing Giannis. He is not going to stay because the Bucks kept Thanasis. He will stay because the Bucks are giving him a chance to win championships. At this point, does Thanasis help them to do that? It's one of those things where for years we've said, final roster spot, who cares? They may only be rostering 14 guys. And then you've got quite a few young guys you're hoping to develop. I don't know if like one of the veteran guys on the roster should be like as much of a nothing as TA has been for 2 years now. Like that's just the reality of it. If he played and if he showed he could play, it's a completely different story. That's not what we're talking about. So they don't need to roster a fan. I mean, it's kind of insane. At this point, do what you can to have as many playable options on your roster, or use this spot for someone who you are going to develop. Like pick up a flyer, a development project for your new coach and your new staff. But
I'd flip him for Costas if he just didn't sign that contract.
He's 31 now. Like it's just on no Thanasis, and on every level, this is just kind of. I don't know what the point of it is.
Rohan might actually be gone.
I'm waiting for this discussion to finish.
Okay.
I think you should weigh in.
You're not going to make the case for the Max again?
I want to hear the counter because I know how much you love him, and if you can sincerely make the counter argument, I'll listen to it. But I like, it's not like I don't like Thanasis. I just think we've got to be serious about this. We're talking again. Everything is shaped around time of change, new era for the Bucks. Like, let's be serious. They lost in the first round.
I guess we're gonna move.
Rohan agrees, and he just doesn't want to say it.
Move on.
He can't say it. He can't bring himself.
He can't say it. That's fine. I understand, Rohan.
I refuse.
We have our thumbnail now of Rohan just gone from the frame, so that's good. Jevon Carter. So I think I'm the biggest Jevon fan, so I'll go first. The interesting thing here, the player option still just floating there. The deadline is June 29th.
29th, yeah.
So the free agency day. Or no, is it one day before? It's
day
one day
before.
before.
It's Thursday.
I really expected him to opt out and do a different deal with the Bucks the whole time for some modest raise. They have his early bird rights, so they could go up to like $12 million. I don't see that coming, but they can give him a raise. The player option is like $2.5 million. He hasn't declined yet. Doesn't mean he won't, but he hasn't yet. And I also thought Pat Connaughton would for sure decline before he opted in and extended. And I know the new CBA is loosening the extension rules quite a bit. So it used to be you got penalized a lot more for taking a lower value. But now he could extend at a higher number than he would have been able to. I kind of wonder if that's in play. If it is, you definitely have a little bit more leeway to bring back somebody else at more than vet min, or maybe even fill the 15th spot and still have the mini MLE and duck the second apron. We'll see. But my case for the player for Jevon, whether it's opting in or opting out or whatever, I still think there's more there than they've let him show. And I know the pull-up threes got irksome for a lot of people, despite, he made him at a high clip. The playoffs, he wasn't very good all around. He also just didn't play very much in general. like I would be fine if they just let him actually be the backup point guard for the season. Like I wouldn't have a problem with that. And if it doesn't work, then you have to pivot. That's fine. I think there were some flashes where he played point guard at a pretty high level, high enough. Would that work if you were like the Clippers and Chris Paul, the Lob City Clippers, and Chris Paul is checking out, and you need him to run this offense totally himself? No, don't think that's what the Bucks backup point guard needs to do. Like move the ball a little bit, spot up, move around Giannis, Chris, Drew, some combination of the three of them. I think he can do enough ball handling for that. I like to see him play more. He's a very good defender. He's a good shooter. Giannis timeline guy. And if he's really available for, like his player option or a little bit more than that, I really think it's kind of a no-brainer to bring him back, especially because you can do it without hampering your spending power. So I know I'm probably high on Jevon than 90% of people. It's not just a podcast thing, man. I really like the tape. I really like the high-end Jevon tape. I'm still a believer. So that's my take.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you'd want to see him back. One thing you really saw Jevon thrive in was a consistent role. When his role started to get like it was a little wishy-washy when he was in the rotation, out of the rotation, minutes were sort of fluctuating. That's when he started to struggle. And especially like that happened in the playoffs too. Like he was playing, he wasn't playing. It's just when he had a consistent set role, he was really good with it. He thrived in that role. It's just when things started to get a little like inconsistent is when he started to struggle. And I mean, who can't relate to that, right? Like if you're in a consistent routine, you tend to perform better.
Says the guy who just dipped out for a full podcast segment.
You got me.
Because he's got a consistent routine of not criticizing TA. He's many years into the routine.
He's keeping the Thanasis guest opportunity on the table.
Always.
Monty Morris, future Buck, we'll see.
But it's just like, yeah, I agree with you, Ty. I think Jevon has more to showcase than he has been able to in his time with the Bucks so far, even this past season where he had an increased role after coming over, after being waived by Brooklyn. It's just, yeah, I'd love to see him back. I think he fits with this team. I think the guys seem to really like him. He seems to gel with everyone. He's a defender. I'm sure Adrian Griffin's going to love to use him, and maybe he's going to have an increased role for Jevon now that he's running the ship. So yeah, I'm all for him coming back. If he opts in, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, and they want to do like a Pat Connaughton route, like an opt in and extend out of that. Maybe we'll see, but I definitely want to see Jevon back.
I'll be thrilled if he opts in. I think there's absolutely no downside to that. I guess where I'm coming at it, and just in terms of the guard position or skill set, I think this team needs a good passing guard. They need someone who is more old school. This is harder than ever to find, but traditional kind of guard. I'll talk about some guards later that maybe get you a little bit closer to that, but it's still not perfect. I don't think the solution is going to be there for the Bucks. You mentioned the pull-up trees. Jevon shot the ball very well last year, but it was a little shot happy as the year went on. And I think it's very easy for us to be like, oh, he made the shots, that's fine. I don't think that's good process for this team. And I think shots should be going to other players. And I think when you're looking at reworking your offense and what are your focal points, I think the Bucks need to be more disciplined in that department. Maybe he can just pick that right up and slot back in, and it's more reflective of the role he's been in before. And the Bucks will have a better read on that than anyone. I would be very wary though on the price going up here, because I think it just locks you into a situation like you had last year, which I think will be fine a lot of the time. And he's a really good defender. He's a good teammate. He's a good player. I think the Bucks might just be in a position where they could do with something a little bit different. To me, it's not so much a referendum on Jevon. I just think they might be in need of something a little bit different. They may not be able to get it, and they might just be very much in a spot where they're like, you know what, we should bring Jevon back. That is the best option that is there for us realistically. If that's the case, fine. I'm not gonna hate this unless it comes in on a higher end of the scale number where that ends up being their move. But I have some concerns, but he's a good player who had a good season. I don't know how much more there is there. That's that's an area where I don't know if I'm in agreement with both of you guys, Tyron. I don't know if there is another level. Like, last season feels like close to his peak in a lot of ways for me. And if there is another level beyond that, it would be a real surprise, even just career trajectory wise. It's not really how it works at this point. It's kind of the old school idea that he's coming into peak years. But when you look at numbers, NBA players tend to peak quite a bit younger than that at this point. And I have a feeling his peak might be last season. I would be very happy to be proven wrong if he comes back with the Bucks, but I do have some reservations there, as much in terms of like a style to mesh with what the Bucks might need, and rather than specifics of his game.
I mean, Javon's been found money for the Bucks the last 18 months, whenever he came to Milwaukee. And he's really maxed out in terms of like his role skill set with how the Bucks were built. Like, no one expected him to become as good of a 3-point shooter, especially with an tick in volume, and play hard-nosed defense and play more minutes than he has in Phoenix and Memphis, and maybe missing or Brooklyn briefly, and all this stuff. And it was really valuable to the Bucks the last 2 seasons, or however many games, or however you want to take it. I just think now we're entering the phase of like, okay, how do you further kind of start valuing that when, contracts are up and he wants more money and stuff like that, all of which are deserved. I tend to agree with Adam that, like, we've seen what, like, that kind of point guard, a 3-and-D type, not just to keep throwing that label towards him, because I just think that's ultimately what he is. And that's very fine. Like, we've seen Patrick Beverley have a very long career. We've seen Matthew Dellavedova obviously played in Milwaukee, but like, that has value to the Bucks and teams that are built with, a player like Giannis, or, like, you could look at like New Orleans if Zion's ever healthy, and kind of look at how they were built, I guess, in other ways. But like, that kind of where the Bucks are building their roster and everything like that, like, a guy like Jevon is always going to be needed. But when it comes to kind of getting a more traditional point guard, one that could create shots and make plays, that might come with a sacrifice of, they may not be as good of a 3-point shooter as Jevon has been, but there is still more to be gained with like someone that can just create their own shot and kind of get the offense humming in ways that I just don't think Jevon is capable of doing besides himself consistently enough. And, if he opts in, this conversation is mute, and I will be very much happy with having Jevon back. But if, I'm looking at those free agent point guards, and not that that's the end all be all, but like, you can easily make a case that Jevon might get a little bit more money based on that if a team needs a point guard behind, I don't know, whatever their starters or anything like that. So, he's approaching that age where money might speak a little bit more, because there's only one shot that you get a decent payday, even if it's not, clearly not going to be an overwhelming amount. But I don't know. It's a tough one for me. It's not as tough as Ingles, but I just think Jevon is he's very good for what he does. But I do think that there are limits to what that can do ultimately. But again, this all could change if he just says, I'm going to opt in, and he's on the Bucks for another year.
$2.24 million. So it would be kind of insane for him to opt in. What number?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Just he should opt out.
Yeah.
Because with his career arc, it still seems like a guy who I would say years are probably what's most valuable to him, and securing like not even the highest level payday, but healthy payday. Like, I mean, NBA money is no joke. At any level, if you can get multiple more years of that and you rack up years and you have a nice career, that seems like a good. And he's coming off a great season, where if he opts in and he has a bad season, he could find himself back in a spot where he was 2 years ago.
If he opts in,
think so, yeah, you would
100%. Same as Pat. Like, it's those are things that happen together. Like, I think there's no shot he would opt in without a guarantee. I would say a virtual guarantee, but I don't know if that's illegal or not. But there's an extension coming for sure. I think if he opts in, I think he should opt out too. What number concerns you guys? The max they could pay him is like $450. That's clearly a lot, but like $318.
That's getting really close to eating into the mini mid level though.
I calculated at $5 million for him. He was the one guy I held over, and that was what gave them the money. And $5 million in year one. I would definitely pay Jevon $6 million a year.
Yeah. It all really depends on what Khris and Brook signed for. And it's like you sort of maneuver around that.
And who else, comes back, if anyone. Yeah.
Do we think collectively, because I know even in trying to map this out, the number you threw out, Ty, is combined, we'll say $45 million per year, Khris and Brook. Do we think that's feasible? That honestly feels slightly... it depends on what's going on with the Rockets. I guess that's the part of it, like what Brook's market really is and what you'd have to pay, which could well be lower than other teams, but for him to say, yeah, I'll take less to stay here.
My estimates were the starting at the low end for Chris's deal, around 30, and then Brook was
15.
3 for 60, yeah. Which I think is not chump change for Brook Lopez. I mean...
3 for 60 or 3 for 45?
60. Oh, no, 3 for 45, sorry. Or 460 if he wants the extra money. I think 15.
I don't
think that's crazy.
No, I think that's...
I don't think it's crazy. I think it's possible, though, that Khris comes in a little over that and Brooks could come in a little over that. And then, obviously, you're... Like, that's all it takes to eat into some of that, and it gets trickier immediately. If those two guys want to stay, there is also a very good chance that you will get them on board with, okay, here is the overall situation. We want to keep you. We will look after you in this way. But if we were to have flexibility to fill out the roster, this is the most we can pay you. Maybe it's a year one discussion and things get structured differently. We'll see. That's tough though, because this is going to be an ongoing concern. I don't know. I think the margin is quite fine there. And for someone like Jevon, then if it ends up that's like your $6 million a year.
Well, at that point,
I don't know.
It becomes who's actually available versus who's.
I was gonna say, I think that's one. If they end up signing him and he's back for $6 million per year, I'll probably be reserving judgment on the signing till we see how the whole off season, like what the Bucks roster looks like, what other options might have been out there to get a read on that. It could be just fine. It could be that's the best move. It's kind of tough right now, though, to imagine in that kind of spot that could have an impact, depending on what happens on the more significant deals above that for the Bucks. It feels slightly unfair, but because he's tied into an off season where it's about Khris and it's about Brook, it's very hard to want to see money going to anyone else until those two guys are locked in, and you also are like, okay, they're locked in. And this is now what's also on the table. And then I think it might be easier to appraise that in a way that's maybe fair to him. I don't know. But does that make sense?
Yeah, it's always kind of impossible. I mean, we did this last year with Ingles for weeks. And could they have gotten Otto Porter? Well, it turns out they didn't want him. But
that did not work well.
Could they have gotten Bruce Brown, like all these other, we don't know exactly what goes in everyone's decision. We don't have everyone's ranking of teams, yada, yada, yada. Whatever. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I do agree. Like, if, player X is a free agent and is like, we knew they would have signed for the mini MLE, but they signed Jevon instead, and player X is better, then it'll feel bad. It's hard to know exactly, but we'll have a much better idea in a week. That's the fun part about free agency. It usually goes often pretty fast. I think we can burn through a couple players here. I think the last real discussion player is Wesley Matthews. I love Wes. I would be fine bringing him back. One of him or Ingles, not both. I want to get younger. I want to get more athletic. Offense or defense, it kind of depends on the rest of the roster. I do think drafting one defensive-minded wing, adding that to Marjan, who projects as such as well, makes me a little less hungry to bring Wes back. But, I mean, he steps in, he plays when they need him. I still thought he played pretty well in the playoffs. You know, I wouldn't hate having him around, but I would like to see him back, but I don't want to see him at Ingles because I just think you're still so old and not athletic. And Wes gets the job done defensively, but another year older at that point. So I'd slightly prefer Wes over Ingles. I'm fine bringing either back at vet minimum, to be clear.
Yeah, one or the other. You don't need both. I think I'm in the same boat. Like, you can't have just like two old guys who can only really play one side of the ball.
You can talk me into Ingles just because they need the offense more, depending on how everything else shakes out, if there's any trades or whatever.
I think that's the thing, is that Wes blocks the path to minutes for the three younger guys that one way or another you might be I say might. We've reached a point the Bucks have to develop these guys to have, like, there's the element of winning now, but there is also, like, do you want this team to be, you know, even remotely good 3 years from now? Because the only chance of that is going to come from, okay, MarJon has to be good. He either has to be good enough that he's going to be a key piece, or that you can trade him at some point as part of another deal. And now we've got two more rookies that are going to factor into that mix. I think just the skill set difference with Wes, although he is a more natural playoff fit, if we're to get into those kind of terms, I think he blocks the path to minutes for MarJon. And if MarJon plays all season and it comes together, that's a very big if, and I would probably put it as a bigger if than most. But that is a much better outcome for Bucks in the playoffs, a much better outcome for the Bucks into the future. And I think you've just got to take that risk to some extent now. You've got to clear minutes and you've got to really give those guys a chance. Because the best version of your roster at this point is probably going to need MarJon Beauchamp to be a good and on the rise NBA player.
I'm right there with Ty and presumably Adam. I love Wes. I think he did save the series because there was no series saving. We're saving. But he played very well and did a lot of work that not a lot of other people did. But I think part of, if there is a big criticism that you can levy at Bud, is that the safe options got a little too comfortable in the end, and Wes kind of fell in that lap, even as great as he played. You know, I do think he has something left to give. I think Terry Stotts, of all people, would certainly bang the drum of why Wes Matthews is still important. And
that's a good point.
Obviously went to deep runs in the playoffs before, not as deep.
Maybe he can collaborate with them on the bench.
Would be
with TA.
I was getting more than TA. I think, you know, Wes is at a point where that might make a whole lot of sense. Although I agree with Jordan. I mean, I think he can certainly play somewhere if he wants. Forget the playoffs, though. I mean, like, and I think that if Wes comes back, I would expect that he doesn't play a lot during the regular season. He played more minutes this past regular season than MarJon in the regular season, though. And that's something that just shouldn't happen again. I mean, that's
the thing, is that we're just talking about MarJon, but like Pat too, like he's in this factor. Obviously, you add in Andre Jackson, Chris Livingston. You know, obviously, we will see how much they actually play with the Bucks. But it's just more prospects that you are blocking out. That Wes Matthews can give you good, solid minutes over the course of the season, but we also saw that like they saved him for the postseason, and that end up working out in a very case-by-case basis. But
I don't think it's good for the team. Like,
exactly.
Yes. If you're gonna play MarJon in the regular season, then you're gonna really like try to kind of blood him where he is the guy. Well, then go and get him the playoff experience too. And there will be ups and downs with that because he's a young player. I just think that they've no choice at this point. It's a way of thinking that if younger players and draft picks in the past had worked out and they'd embrace that more often, maybe they're in a better spot than they are right now and some of these decisions we're facing. But you've just got to do it. It also aligns with, in theory, some of the reasons why you chose this particular coach, or maybe some of the strengths that are there. And if you don't lean into that and we're just doing same veteran players, same style of players back over and over again. What's the point? I mean, I don't think the outcome will be any different. I feel bad for West too, because obviously he's had 2 spells with the Bucks, and I don't know, is he unlucky? Should the Bucks actually actively be looking to move on?
Maybe Mr. Milwaukee.
Maybe
he's been repaid very terribly.
Maybe
that sucks for him, because he's been a really good Buck and he's been very easy to like in both spells. But I unfortunately for him, I think I'd probably move on again, because I just think you've got to put your faith in the young guys and you've got to try and make something out of them, because your future quite literally depends on finding something, making something out of those kind of young players.
You think the Bucks should own that future? West would be a tremendous new version of DeMar Carroll. I imagine he'd want to play somewhere. We'll see what decision he makes. Okay. Goran Dragic, Myers Leonard, the 2 ways. Can we just...
Let's just move on.
I will say,
let's talk about
people are banging the drum for AJ Green on a regular contract. It gets tough with the roster spots. I'm not
think a
closed
2-way is
off
fine.
to it. I think
2 ways
is fine.
absolutely perfect.
We have... Would that be the third one? Because we have Amari Moore and is Jazzy and Gortman on a 2-way?
Oh, I didn't know that. I was going to ask, is Lindell officially...
Nothing is official yet, I don't think, but I don't know. I don't really see the pathway.
And they also signed him after everything that happened with Mamu too, so it wasn't like, I think that was just like, hey, we'll give you
a gesture. Yeah.
Goodwill gesture, but they kind of live to pass on Lindell infinitely.
Yeah. Anyway, AJ Green had a good rookie year. I don't know if there's going to be space, just with roster spots. We'll see. 2-way would be good, because I do think he showed some things.
Yeah.
But if we're looking for athleticism, could probably look in a different direction. And it seems like the Bucks are indeed looking for that. Okay, should we get to the outside free agents? No one wants to bang a drum for ICU number 3. So what we did is it helped, at least presumably, we each picked 2, a potential mini MLE guy and then a vet min guy. So, quite honestly, it's so hard to project what any player will get. Every year there's surprises. Our mini MLE guys could end up going for vet min. Our vet min guys could get, $8 million a year. Like there's JaVale McGee was the first contract and he was a full MLE last year. Like,
that is right.
We only know so much. We only know so much about what's going to happen in the free agency market, but we're trying here. I have 3 actually, so I'm going to need to whittle down to 2 at some point. But who's most excited about one of their players?
Oh, I think Adam is.
He has been teasing in our group chat.
Yeah.
He's been playing it up.
Well,
big.
I got pushback. You got played up bigger because Jordan was like, "Oh, there's no good centers in this class," and I think the Bucks just really need to act here. I think it's a conversation we haven't had. They may need to look quite hard at, well, what would be the options if we were to trade Bobby Portis? If Brook is to come back and if you're going to reshape things. If Brook somehow is elsewhere, well, then this is a real crisis and you've got to make a move. I would like the Bucks to try and go and get Thomas Bryant.
I threw out Thomas Bryant when Rohan and I threw out 500 low-paid free agents. Huge upside potential. I mean, he was huge
upside
with Washington, I thought.
I did not understand why the Lakers just offloaded him for.
That's kind of the story of his career, though, too. It's always been like he's a really good rebounder, high energy guy. I kind of feel like he is a very good fit for a lot of what Adrian Griffin might like the identity of the Bucks to be. And that if that's not like if Brook is back as we hope he is, there might be elements of that aren't seamless, but I do think you've got to get another option in the mix as a big. You very astutely, Ty, alluded to the influence of Giannis this season and how Giannis has talked about playing center in the past. I think we'll all say, oh, they need to do more of that, and they probably will. But Giannis also does not want to do that, and he's getting older, and it's probably not the smartest idea. You need another center. I nearly said big, but I want to stop saying that because Bobby is a big and it doesn't work in the way that's exactly needed here. Thomas Bryant he is quite skilled. He's got kind of
this year.
He started shooting trees and he shot trees pretty well.
44% on 1 per game. It's something.
So
came back from a pretty devastating Achilles injury too. Like he's not looked worse for wear.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You know how old Thomas Bryant is?
Is it 27?
25?
He turns 26 at the end of the month, at the end of July. So a quite young player.
Was 2017 draft class? 2016?
Yeah, you went second round in 2017.
2017.
That's right.
Must have been young for his class. Honestly, you know what? I'm just going to tip the cap. You won me over. I think this makes a lot of sense. I'd be very happy.
Wow, I win.
Yeah.
Do we just go home? Do we wrap it up now?
Yeah, I think that's it.
I mean, I'm still excited about my guys, but I really like Tom, and I think it would be, now that we're just talking about like a pretty reasonable, like not a big contract, my pushback to the backup center thing has always been, can you use one of your main assets on a guy who's not going to play much in the playoffs, hopefully, spot minutes in the regular season. But at this point, with how old Brook is and the importance of depth and it being a $5 million contract, I think I'm in. The rest of the players are not that encouraging. I think if he is available, this would be a really nice get for the Bucks.
Yeah, it's a move for the future, realistically.
Yeah, but he can play now.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like, I to be clear, I am a fan of Thomas Bryant. I would be very happy if the Bucks get Thomas Bryant on the mini MLE. How is it going to work in terms of the rotation? This is assuming Brook Lopez comes back. Well,
I think you gotta put Brook on a minutes plan, which you should probably do anyway.
Yeah, I think it would be smart to do regardless. Like
Brook plays 24 a game. That's like 20 for Thomas Bryant. You go small here and there.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's like an 18-minute a game guy, that it's like he slots in, he knows his role, and that if the matchup isn't ideal come playoff time, like he's not just a nothing player either. He could be someone that you're very good in his minutes.
Yeah.
That could be the case, that he's a really good fit for whatever the new system ends up looking like, that there'll be playoff matchups where you're like, okay, Brook, this isn't ideal for you. We've really got to cut back your minutes and someone else can play here. Bobby, as much as we love Bobby and he's done a lot of great stuff, for as different as he is to Brook, there's never the ideal because of his defense. Oh, well, this is the Bobby Portis matchup. And I'm not saying Thomas Bryant is like the world's best defender or anything, but I think his physical makeup and how he plays adds just a bit more. And now when he is showing signs of developing a pretty good 3-point shot as well.
Yeah.
I there's a lot that's intriguing there, I think, as a Bucks fit.
He is going to be in the Hall of Fame. That is not a hot take. He is making a very impressive seal on LeBron's historic shot to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. He is like in the center of the picture that is certainly going to be in Springfield. It's impressive. Look, I love a player that LeBron is clearly gunning to make history. And if you look at the pick, like he's like got a great seal under the basket. He's like, LeBron, I know you're doing something. If we want these 2 points against Oklahoma City, I do have good position here. I'm a fan.
He has his place in history, for sure.
Good luck anyone following that up. I don't
NBA champion as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
Again, Lakers like, yeah, we're just going to get rid of you.
Yeah. No good centers, Jordan? No good centers, eh?
I can see that he was one of two guys I was like, oh, they're more interesting.
Didn't he request a trade? Wasn't that it?
He might have.
Well, I think they saved money. The Mo Bamba. I don't know. It was very weird. Oh, no, they sent Pat Bev for Mo Bamba and then never played. The Lakers are weird, man.
Yeah.
Rohan, do you want to go next?
Sure, I'll go next. So I mentioned this guy in our last pod, Ty. I didn't go for a big. If I did have a big option, it would be Thomas Bryant, though. I'm in full agreement. I would love Thomas Bryant. Little bit of a reunion here.
Oh boy,
with Donte DiVincenzo.
Oh.
See, here's the thing.
This is the opposite of Adam's pick.
I've definitely won now. That's for sure.
So if you want a guy who's like going to be like can hound players on defense, can move the ball, can slash, can be an active guy on offense, who almost shot 40% from three on the highest volume of his career last season, it's Donte DiVincenzo. With a new system, with Adrian Griffin, I think he'd be very, very valuable. Brings a skill set to the guard position that they don't really have on the roster. Like, he's not as dynamic a shooter as, like, say, a Grayson Allen, but he's a better driver. He's a better defender than Grayson Allen. He brings more like dynamism to the guard position. He sort of shores up that rotation.
Good and bad dynamism.
Yes,
he can't make layups. Do not forget that he can't make layups.
Is only so useful.
And he's theoretically he's a shooter. Like, he shot well last season, but we've seen the ups and downs of that too. Like, we've got scar tissue here, which is part of the problem. If we were Cleveland Cavaliers podcast and you threw Donte DiVincenzo out there, we're probably all on board. But we've seen this movie before.
I kind of think he's going to be too expensive to throw.
I actually agree with that. I think
he opted out of 5'7".
He
did, and he's in bag searching mode.
He's not gotten any long deal.
It's going to be scooting all the way to the bank.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's also, I know he's coming off a good year. He is kind of a health risk. We saw it firsthand.
Big time.
He played one full season with the Bucks.
I'm shocked this was Rohan's pick. I did not see this coming.
I know. This is kind of a curve.
I was going to say Russ. Like, he's going to do something.
Rohan is just a romantic. That's all it is. It's the same. It's the attachment to TA. It's like, let's bring Donte back. His minimum pick's going to be Jabari Parker now. You wait and see.
Future son. Can I just say I think that is like out of all the available.
It is not going to be Jabari Parker.
I literally had that thought of like, where is Jabari up to? Oh,
I can't imagine what they need less than Jabari Parker in Phoenix. I just can't. I don't. Yeah, let's go. Just, you know what? Like he said, they don't pay any of us to play defense. That's going to be the team mantra. They're going to break huddles on that. And Frank Vogel's just going to have no hair left. Poor guy.
No, he's going to get more hair plugs and pull out those hair plugs. That's what he's going to do.
Oh, man.
Do you want to go next time?
Yeah,
Is it just the finishing that's concerned to you guys?
The injury,
injury,
the bad decision making,
shooting.
I don't believe is real. I mean,
sorry, bro.
This goes.
Say everything.
Except this is what's stronger than you used to be.
He''s a good defender. He's too risky, but he is good when he's available.
Yeah. I also think I think the reason why he had the perfect system to play in with Golden State.
Yeah, I do think he was a unique.
He thrives on chaos, and part of that's Golden State's. That's what the Bucks ultimately wanted their offense to be, is the play random, everything like that, but Golden State knows how to play like that and incorporate, players like Donte. The year before it was Gary Payton 2 and Otto Porter and all that stuff that it works in that way. I don't know how it worked. And then, we have no idea what this offense is going to look like. We have no idea how it's going to incorporate if he leaves Golden State and goes to, I think New York is kind of a team that's been chasing
the Nova gang.
The Nova Knicks. I don't know how that's gonna, especially Tibbs like that could be terrible.
I will say, and I have long been on record going back to when he was a book of not really being a fan of Donte. If they were to get him, I do see a world where it could work out.
Oh, he's not bad.
And I guess that's
I didn't say he's good.
He might not be bad. He might not be bad, and he might not be bad in a Bucks jersey to bring him back. I think that's a very. I don't want to open up that we ended up relitigating things from a year ago, but remember the risks that came. Very different profile player, but a move the Bucks made that you were a little upset about, Rohan, because just a little upset. And part of it was the kind of all the risks attached. This is very different. Younger player. He's coming off a healthy season. But I do think it's possible you could get the version of Donte where everything goes wrong. This could happen with anyone, but if that's your chips played and it's on a guy you've had to look up close and you've seen that version of him before, I think that'd be really, really bad for the Bucks. Like, I think it'd be a really bad look if John Horst is like, I can't quit you, Donte DiVincenzo, and he comes back and he's just awful, which is possible. But if it happens, I wouldn't be happy, but I would admit, as I am now, like, there's a world where it can work out. I can see your vision. I can't say I believe in the vision, but I could see what you're kind of thinking through with it, Ron.
I'll take it. Okay, Ty, who's your guy?
I can't quit my unproven point guards. That's who I'm going to go with. I swooned over someone on the pod with Rohan. One of those two players, it's so hard. I fall in love with these vet minimum level guys. I really do. I'm going to go.
What are you going to say?
I'm going to shake it up. Shake Milton for the mini.
Oh, we got overlap.
Yeah.
That was my other one too.
That's my mini MLE guy.
I think if Harden goes back, and it seems like he will, Shake could be on the way out of there. The Rockets, or the Sixers, would obviously have Harden and Maxey, who at this point are really both point guards, and Shake didn't really get a bunch of out. His minutes have gone down each of the last 3 seasons. 8 points, over 3 assists, like 1.2 turnovers, shot the ball well for only the second time in his career, which is a little concerning, but he just has some juice, and he's like 27 now, I think. So, like, that's a fun flyer, man. I mean, that would be if I know, Adam, you want the Bucks to prove that they're really going to change up the approach and the roster and get younger and more athletic. This would be fun. This would be like, okay, this is a guy who he may really be a good player and just hasn't really gotten to show it yet. I think there's some clear upside there. I'm going to maintain my Jevon fandom, even in this world where they can get Shake Milton, because I think you can just slide Jevon off the ball more. I think you can have both players. Nothing prevents that. But I would be really, really obsessed with this flyer. I mean, he's 13-point per game player a couple of years ago, and he had some more role. Since Harden came, he just hasn't had that. But he seems like a player who, maybe I think he's gotten better over that time, just really hasn't gotten to show it. Could be a really nice buy low candidate who, again, all of these players, we don't know what they'll end up going for, but none of these guys are players who have been like rumored to be in line for a $10 million contract somewhere. And I think if you can get Shake and let him be your true backup point guard, that'd be really intriguing to me.
I obviously agree with you because that was my mini MLE guy. I think he played his most minutes with the Sixers last year. But between Harden, Maxey, all that stuff, obviously Nurse too is a new coach, and with Milton being a free agent, it's very easy that the Sixers kind of walk away from it. But I think Shake Milton kind of brings not as good, but everything that we saw with Joe Ingles, just in a more obviously younger, a little bit more athletic body and stuff like that. Like, he does fit this kind of mantra that they've tried to chase out formerly with Donte, but does it more credibly with pass, dribble, shoot. He's a very good playmaker. 240 total assists to 94 turnovers, which I was about to do with my assist to turnover ratio. I'm doing this live on pod. I'm a very good podcaster. I'm very great. 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5. I just think, again, to kind of keep harping on this key point that needs to be established with the Bucks offense. It's about guys that can make plays, create shots, all that stuff. And I don't know. I think he's always been kind of a guy that, like, doesn't get mentioned a lot, kind of falls through the cracks, especially on Philly's roster, but that is obviously a contending team, even if they haven't gotten out of the second round. And maybe he floats better at a team that could possibly achieve those those fortunes and those aspirations. And two, like, he's an efficient player. Like, it's not like you're kind of banking on like a leap. Like, for what he is, he's going to stick around the league for a while now. Like, there's a good track record that he's a good player, and I think that I don't know. It would be an inspired signing, even if it wouldn't be like, oh, like they got Shake Milton. What? As much as
That's how we would
harp on
react.
those.
I
know,
really
yeah.
think we would. I mean,
We would. No,
it's-
these.
Yeah, we would.
no, I
everyone
get it.
else.
I get your
yeah.
point, but I do think this is like about as exciting as it can get, particularly in terms if you're looking guards who can make a real impact. Because I'm not surprised that I say Thomas Bryant and people get on board very quickly, and now Shake Milton's out, and it's like the options are. This is slim pickings. And that is part of my concern here is that other teams in situations like the Bucks will look at the list of free agents and they'll be like, yeah, we'd like Thomas Bryant or Shake Milton. Like, the Bucks will always have a good chance because they have a compelling case named Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I think even this is someone like this is kind of, I guess, in looking at this and weighing up Jevon as the backup and what more is there. Like, Shake Milton obviously has a higher offensive. I shouldn't say obviously. You guys might disagree. I don't know if you will. To me, he has a higher offensive ceiling. And there were spells, particularly last year, where he had runs starting where he kind of went on a tear. And even when I was trying to work out what's the kind of too good to be true here, and I couldn't quite get to the bottom of it, other than it seems like kind of Doc just every now and then would be like, yeah, that's enough and let's change things up. And his role was de-emphasized as the season went on, in spite of the fact that when he played and played really meaningful minutes, his production was very significant, like far outpacing what we're now kind of with a full season looking at as his averages. He's a stretch through November, December. Like, I mean, you've got 5 out of 6 games where he's scoring more than 20 points per game. You've got 9 assists, 10 assist games. But I think there is a guy there. The Bucks are not going to be asking him to do anything like that, barring injury. But having someone who could be comfortable in doing that if was asked of them, it's kind of exactly what they've been missing. And I think we're all used to Drew, and we love Drew, and we know what he's good at and what he's bad at. I think a backup point guard, combo guard even, I guess, somewhat in this case, with this kind of skill set is really important when you've got Drew. And it might just be easier said than done. You might not be able to get one, but I think in an ideal world, you've got someone who's got, good size, they're physical, he can rebound, he can block some shots at times too.
Just took a career high percentage of his looks within 3 feet of the rim, so he's getting to the rim more.
Like that. I think he would make a ton of sense.
He's a guy that, honestly, when the Bucks, again, not to glom on two-way players and stuff like that, but when I saw that they signed Amari Moore and you dive into him, I'm like, oh, if he turns out to be Shake Milton, that would be amazing. That would be perfect. Yeah, I mean, like, again, that's a very shot in the dark, and not all prospects are going to pan out the most optimal outcome. But yeah, like I just if we had talked about, like, again, this is a very strange hypothetical, but say if Shake Milton was a player that came out in this draft class and you take him late in the second round and you pick him up as a two-way player, you'd be thrilled that, like, he's like this guy that can do all the things that he does and everything like that. Plus, too, like, financially, like, he's coming off a pretty cheap contract, so getting MLE money, even at the mini MLE under the new CBA, like, that is a huge step up on what he had. He kind of had the hinky special with where he was, and I think was he undrafted?
54th overall pick.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was late when he got drafted, because I remember being interested in when he.
Kind of a weird faller. He was someone I remember working out with the Bucks back when we got to know those things, and I remember really liking him. Yeah. Was he in the Brogdon draft? He couldn't have been, right?
No, it was the Donte draft.
Oh, right. Bucks have a second rounder that year.
No.
I remember really liking him. I remember I remember him also being mocked.
As a first rounder.
He was mocked mid to late first. Yeah, very, very frequently, and then fell and fell.
This is one of the most loaded second rounds ever, by the way. I don't want to just get into that mode of just saying guys' names, but seriously, this is all.
You always want to get into the mode,
and I will. Second round, 2018. Here's a list of players: Jevon Carter, Jalen Brunson, Devontae Graham, Mitchell Robinson, Gary Trent Jr., Jared Vanderbilt, Bruce Brown, Hammy Diallo, DeAnthony Melton, Svi Mihailuk, a player I will save for my next go. Shake Milton, Thanasis Antetokounmpo. I lost a little steam, but that's a pretty good out of 32nd rounders.
What are you wrong? What's this? I feel like Costas is becoming your Thanasis.
He's a center. He makes more sense. He's younger.
Let's keep moving.
Okay, well, Jordan, who's your other guy?
For Vetman?
Yeah.
Look at my.
Well, because I stole your mini MLE, right?
Do we have to do Vetman?
Well, I have two more players. I would like to say I broke the rules.
I mean, I can
Should we just
name.
Talk about who we want. I mean, that's fine. Whatever.
I think options. There's no point us leaving good players off this and talking about just the absolute like dregs of what's out there.
Fine. Who do you want to talk about, Adam?
No, if Jordan has, then if it doesn't have to be Vetman, we can get back to mine in a second. But
my other mini MLE guy that I thought was interesting was Lonnie Walker. Kind of the same reasons. More of a scorer than. Plus, that was what the leaker signed him for last year. So useful player, not like I don't know. Shake seems a little bit more kind of up my alley. Lonnie Walker's he's interesting, but athletic too. But just kind of, I don't know. He feels like they're both known commodities. I don't know why I felt more sure about Shake than over Lonnie the fourth.
I like Shake. Take Alec Burks off your list. The Pistons are picking up his $10.5 million player option. The latest
just incredible.
Just a set of decisions designed to make me question if I know anything about basketball. Everything the Pistons do, I'm just like, but why?
They're going to trade?
I think they just like him. I think they just like his vibes, his energy.
Sure.
Anyway, Adam, hopefully it wasn't Alec Burks. Who's your next?
This is a slightly weird one. Again, it came from me having Thomas Bryant as the number one guy. I was like, this team needs to find a guard. This is not someone who I think will be vet minimum, and I don't know if I'd want the mini mid-level. And beyond that, this is a restricted free agent, so it's not simple. But there's been some buzz that maybe this person's team are like they have their eyes on their point guards, and I wonder could they be available? It's Tre Jones.
Oh, that's a tough one.
Ooh,
that's optimistic.
It is optimistic.
It would be incredible. I just don't know. I don't think it's feasible.
I don't see the reason. I mean, the Spurs being the Spurs, even if they're like we'd like another point guard, they should just keep him.
Yeah, he's a good backup point guard. I mean,
they should just retain him.
It's probably what he tops out as, which is fine for the Bucks. But
you never know. You never know. And the fact that there has been this kind of sense of they might be looking at different options, and also, I mean, they might have good reason for wanting a much more experienced point guard and maybe going a slightly different route. Now, obviously, with Victor Wembanyama there. He's just a guy that, again, if you're looking towards the lower end of the scale, and then even better, someone who is young, someone who, if it was to work out, you could have as a key piece and look to build something with. Very, very intriguing. I honestly, I can't make out exactly how it would come together, but it feels like something that's not impossible. Maybe, just maybe, the Spurs decide, no, we're going a different direction, and we won't be matching offers, and he becomes available. And if that was the case, I would like the Bucks to be sniffing around in the mix, because beyond that, and beyond having talked about like Shake Milton or mentioning Lonnie Walker, it's so grim to see the Bucks add guards, and that's the place where
if it's not one of those guys,
yeah, or you've got to make sure you're keeping Jevon, and you may still have some of the deficiencies that come with that, because you're like. You're like, is Teo Maladon were the flyer? That's the kind of place
Hugo
you get.
Bassan?
No, not in front of the year. I almost put Frankie
not for their year, but
list.
maybe that. I did too. I really wanted to, and then I just took another look at the numbers.
I looked at his numbers.
The numbers just.
I would take him as vet min. He's a good defender.
I would like.
It's just not what they need, though. They need someone who's good offensively.
Yeah. All in on
There's
defense.
always, to your point too, Adam, there's always a couple restricted free agents that they just get dropped of their rights by their team.
He'd have to get renounced. I mean, there's no way the Spurs aren't matching. If he signs a 2-year, $10 million offer sheet, I think San Antonio goes, okay, cool. And also, I don't even think you can. It gets into restricted free agency rules. So
it could be one of those that, they extend a qualifying offer, and an offer comes in, and they look at whatever other business they want to do, and they get like, okay, well, this is actually our target for that, and we want the money to use elsewhere and this. And then they're just like, you know what? We'll pull the offer sheet. You're an unrestricted free agent. It happens. It's possible.
Yeah.
It's unlikely, but he's someone who I would have a very close eye on if I was the Bucks, again, because I just don't think the point guard options are all that great. And they should make it their business to do that. And even more so, as is apparent here, I'm trying to lean on the young side here. There are older guys who, I don't know, maybe they're at the point where they're now vet min. This is always one of the challenges too. We could just be like, maybe player X is now someone who's going to be in ring chasing mode. And then day one of free agency, they could sign a deal that's $10 million a year.
Did someone say LeBron James?
Well,
No.
you did. No one else, but you sure did.
I like Tre Jones. I would be shocked. I would be surprised. Hasn't been a very good shooter, but with the upside he's shown as a playmaker and scorer, that's fine. We're not getting perfect players for the mini MLE. So
I can give you one vet min if we want a vet min option. I don't think this makes as much perfect sense roster wise, but centers, point guards, that's not where the vet mins are. I quite like Yuta Watanabe.
He's on my list.
And there's the connection there from his time with the Raptors too, that I wonder maybe Adrian Griffin could like him too. So that was my vet min. I don't feel like that's really where the Bucks should be adding to the roster.
I mean,
but good player, good shooter. Yep.
39% 3-point shooter, pretty mobile guy, moves well. He's 29. Just nobody ever plays him. I don't really get it. Every time I watch him, I'm like, oh, guy looks really useful. It looks like the kind of Robert Covington player. Teams are always falling themselves over, trying to overpay and overplay. You just never played 16 minutes a game this year. It was his career high. I would love Yuta. I think he will be available. I think there's people out there who are like, oh, he's going to be high paid. No one ever plays him. No one ever talks about him. I do think that's feasible. I would be on board for sure. He's on my list just because I don't think you can get enough wings who can credibly survive on the perimeter at least and hit shots. And it's always nice to add another one. I mean, we're excited about Andre Jackson and Marjan. Like you, Jordan, said, Amari Moore versus Shake. You want to have both. You're allowed to have depth and stockpile stuff for the future and develop and have playable guys. So, I mean, I think Marjan should and will play this year. But I'm not going to not sign a promising wing player because, they drafted someone at 36 overall. I just don't think that's a good thought process.
Are we playing vet min throughout names?
Rohan, do you have any more mini MLEs? I don't know. My last guy's probably vet min, to be honest, too.
It's it's a bunch of guys where it's do you want to ring chase for the mini MLE like Kelly Oubre or someone like that?
I'm good, actually. I would rather not pay him any money. I don't want him. I don't like your list at all.
I was about to say this is tough. Ron, I want you to name more names because this is going great so far.
Russ has got to be in here somewhere.
No, he's not. He's not. I know the name Kevin Love has been floated in discussions.
Okay, that's fine. I mean,
I'm not super thrilled about that.
Yeah, I don't really. That's fine.
It's just, it's okay.
That's what you have to do if you lose. Rook.
Yeah, that's
that's what it feels like.
Or maybe Bobby and you don't have anything lined up and you just need more bigs.
You know who's a big? Wenyen Gabriel.
Oh, okay, sure. I like Wenyen. I think he's a 4, not a 5. They played him as a 5, but
yeah, you get he's a tweener forward, so it's you get a little bit of flexibility there, some versatility. Sure, he's not best suited to be a 5, but he's a big guy and can actually use that to his advantage at times.
Awesome guy too, by the way. Players love Wenyen Gabriel.
Can you convince him to come back to Wisconsin, ring chase for a bit? I don't know what his market is necessarily going to be like. He's not the best shooter, but can he be a guy who goes out there and makes impact plays? Absolutely, he can. So I'd be down for Wenyen.
Jalen McDaniels was maybe he's too. I feel like he's in the camp of too rich for a vet min, but too kind of risky for a mini MLE because you're really banking on 1 year that he makes a decent leap, and he was kind of a trade guy, trade bait. Or yeah, he did get traded. He got traded to Philadelphia. What am I talking about?
For very little, which I do think kind of indicates your market in free agency as well. It did not take much to get him to the Sixers.
It was Rudy Gay expiring in a future second. Oh, sorry. That was John Collins, which is the worst trade I've seen in a long time.
Who was apparently the Bucks had internal discussions about.
Which is
I would too if it was that was the price. That was the price.
It was probably. Did you hear what the Hawks are going to say?
Wait, do you think we
look at these guys?
Do we have a trade exception sitting around anywhere? Can we just take him? We'll take him. That'd be nice. We'll have him for free, I guess. It's pretty crazy.
I think that's pretty much all my guys that maybe mini MLE.
I've got this is more Vetman, I think. Another Spur. I got very excited about Rohan can't guess. I got very excited about this player on our podcast.
Oh, I think I know who it is.
Who do you think, Jordan?
I call it Keita Bates-Diop.
Keita Bates-Diop. Finally started hitting the threes. 6'8", 28-year-old, I believe, forward. Good size, moves well. Just put in a year was put in 3 years with the Spurs. Initially was a Timberwolf. I don't know if the shooting's real, but if you're talking about athletic guys who move well, had just about 2-to-1 assist turnover. He didn't assist much, but doesn't turn the ball over. Just feels like a good Bucksy forward. And if they got him on vet man, I'd be like, wow, that's a pretty exciting, forward depth signing. I like the way he plays. What if Mo Bamba gets waived? It's non-guaranteed this next year.
I just feel like we do this all the time.
I know.
I'd more like Jock Landale.
Oh, yeah. For all the Suns guys, I just assume they're going to overpay to keep them because that's the only way they can have depth. And I'm not a big Jock guy.
They're not trying.
Well, I really liked Jock in the Olympics.
Summer League.
Well, I liked him in the Olympics. I wasn't putting a whole lot of stock. I was excited when I was like, oh, maybe the Bucks will, really put something into this. I remember him playing in Summer League, but I don't put stock in that, as you know, Jordan.
Jock.
What about Max Strus?
Oh, yeah, see, so the thing with Miami, rumor from Florida Sports Reporter today, they were thinking about waiving and stretching Kyle Lowry, which would low-key, I think, just be disastrous. If they waive him, I think that's bad. He was kind of useful. It doesn't help them open up. It's just like a tax thing if they do it.
If they do, welcome to Milwaukee, Kyle Lowry.
That's, he'd be one of the better point guard options in free agency. He's not great. He would,
but let's change. Let's get young.
I know. Let's get young. I'm down to get young.
I'm so over this. I just as everywhere we can. I'll say goodbye to lots of players. Anyone who isn't Khris or Brook. As I said, as much as I'm like, maybe just keep Joe Ingles. Just get rid of all the olds.
What about
bring some youth in?
Would you guys rather get Strus or Gabe Vincent?
Vincent.
Well, I'd prefer Vincent too.
I don't know if I buy the shooting, but I think he's good enough offensively for it not to matter.
He kind of feels that. I don't think he's a playmaker. I think he's a very score-first-minded kind of guy. I think he's honestly he is a little bit a boost offensively than Jevon, just because he can create his own shot a little bit more.
He's very streaky. Some games you're like, oh my God, the Bucks have seen it plenty, and some other teams in the playoffs did too. Mm-hmm. I think Strus is more consistent, but as Adam, you've laid out, less of a position of need. Yeah.
I just thought they're probably both going to get a lot of money, right?
I think Vincent for sure has got to get
Vincent. I would have
the buzz that I heard from Windhorst was the opposite pretty recently.
I was going to say Strus kind of fits the mold of what teams are always going to go for in free agency. Guy that can shoot threes, super athletic. He's not the greatest defender, but plays hard on that end.
The Bucks don't have real money, so it wouldn't really be like this. I don't think this is the point that you think I was going to make, Jordan. I actually think both guys have pretty bad contract potential outside of Miami.
Yes.
They're both guys
Yeah.
where like the stuff they've done well is streaky. Like Strus has had some bad shooting seasons. Vincent really hasn't had a very good 3-point shooting season. Has just had the playoff run.
It's like Dellavedova Teletovic stuff.
Well,
that's
look
the
Davis Bertans got like this huge deal, and they
Yeah.
got flipped 2 years later on draft night.
Duncan Robinson, it happened without even switching teams. Although he looked good again, kind of in the playoffs. He suddenly could slash. That's weird, but I mean, listen, I'll say either Miami of those two Miami guys for the mini MLE, I would try them. I think they have potential. I think they're good players. I think they probably look a little better in Miami than they would most other places, but they're intriguing players. If Miami is really in like, oh, we're worried about the tax mode, and maybe both of them are playing on different teams next year, we'll see.
Yeah.
Ron, you've got more names. Come on, we know you've got.
Actually,
more
I think I got one more name.
Okay, let's hear it, Jordan.
Because I don't know if I think he's not gonna. I don't know. He's kind of a tough one to peg too. Dario Saric. He's a good player. I don't know if he
Too old for Adam.
fits.
Adam's out on this guy. The old guys.
Well, I think too. It's kind of a Bobby thing. If they didn't have Bobby, I think I'd be like, oh, I would roll the dice on Dario. He looked pretty good post first year coming back from injury. He's a fine player. He's not like gonna make a lot of money, but if you get him, you're like, oh, that's a good borrow depth signing. That who knows how he factors in playoff wise, but like I don't know.
I like his skill set a lot. I don't know. I'd have major questions.
It's a
at
weird
this
fit
point.
with the Bucks.
It is.
Mhm.
I hear Taurean Prince could get waived. That's kind of interesting. Wouldn't be the
Taurean
top
Prince
of my list.
puts up very good numbers consistently.
He
I
never
don't
seems-
think he helps winning basketball, and teams are never that keen on keeping him around.
No one treats him as essential.
Here's a name. Now that there's been a coaching change, Dennis Schroder.
No.
Oh God.
I personally want to say I do not support that.
Well, you just said it though.
I'm just throwing names out there.
Let's throw better names out there. That's
It's Slim Pickens.
the name though that stokes the fire.
I hate him.
Yeah,
I
same.
I just don't think, like, I understand why you're saying now there's a different coach. You know what? I think Bud was right on Dennis Schroder. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't just discount that and be like, oh, well, maybe, he doesn't already hate this coach and this coach doesn't already hate him. So let's bring this in, because it might just be a matter of months before all of that happens.
Plus, I think
don't.
it's kind of fun that he just like disappears somewhere and then shows up and is suddenly a crucial Lakers role player every March. I kind of enjoy it. It kind of makes me laugh at them, even though they had a good playoff run. It makes me laugh at them in a fun way that like you need like drifter Dennis Schroder to save your season to a certain extent. I hope it happens again. I hope he goes and plays in Botswana and then comes back.
When that happens, he's like, look who comes
Yeah.
crawling back.
He's like, do you want to
Thought
give me
you
that?
could live with your own failure.
Yeah,
Where did you
everybody
bring
thinks
back to me?
they don't need Dennis, and yet they need Dennis.
But then he becomes a menace again, and you realize why you didn't have him all along. Adam, I want to ask you about a player.
Patrick Beverly.
He was on my list.
He's old. He's
He's
fine.
old. He was not as good, but
You want to stay old, Ron, right?
No, I don't.
That's the vibe I'm getting here.
I do not.
Adam,
I
how
will,
much-
for the record, I still kind of expect the Bucks to lean older, and I just think that's
Yes, because
that's the very
what
win now
contending
top
teams do,
process. But they should look at, for example, a team like the Heat. That's not how the Heat built a roster that was able to beat them. I don't think that's how it works anymore, and I think teams kind of default to, oh, that guy's a good player. He's been around a lot. He knows that's not the ideal way to build a roster anymore. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's the route the Bucks go. It just feels like it has to be the point where they move away from that.
Or at
Go
least
on,
mix
Ty.
and match.
Who have
a
you
little.
got?
Have you gotten to watch Misic at all?
No, not really.
He's
I know of him, but I haven't got to watch.
EuroLeague kind of combo guard player who the Thunder have the draft rights. It sounds like he wants to come over, but he doesn't really want to play for the Thunder. I have no idea what it's going to cost to get his draft rights out of there. or if he's willing to take like a second-round pick contract. Like he could end up being a mini MLE guy to a certain extent, but intriguing player. Obviously not NBA proven, but has been one of the top EuroLeague, players who could come over to the NBA for a couple of years now. Could be a Bucks move as well.
It would be a real break from, I think, how the Bucks generally approach these things, which again would be welcome. Like, we've reached the point, you've got to get creative, you've got to find something somewhere. It just hasn't really seemed like Horst's MO, hasn't seemed like the Bucks MO going back before that when Horst was a figure in a different front office. So I'd be surprised, but...
Plus, if a second round pick is what the Thunder want, you trade one to get Andre Jackson. We're at that point where things are very thin on the draft pick front. That's one less asset that you can be like, oh, let's do that and hand out. Like it's kind of a 1-2 that you have to do, but it hinges on that one, and I don't know. It's a tough one. He's wanted to come to the NBA for a while now, and I think this year feels like it's likely, or the most likely. If it's not this year, I don't think it'll ever happen. But
I'd love to come to the NBA too, Jordan. And they just my number never gets called.
He's a 6'5", 29-year-old guard. He's been playing in Turkey for EuroLeague, and 18 points a year ago, about 16 points this year. 5
Is it Fenerbahce still?
No,
I think he's I don't think
Anadolu Efes?
Yeah,
Anadolu Efes.
Yeah.
I knew Ty was avoiding saying a team name, so I was going to put some.
When you said he's playing for the EuroLeague.
I know Fenerbahce. Used to play for Bayern Munich. Did you guys
are you ready for some names? I'm going to shoot them out like Bango's little cannon.
Okay.
Med names. Aaron Holiday.
Yeah.
Nepotism, but also a pretty good basketball player.
I kind of think Drew doesn't like his brothers.
We're moving on from brothers. We're moving on.
No,
we're moving on from one brother to maybe getting another one.
No, just brothers are out.
Brother from the same mother. Next name, Damian Lee.
I'm sure you were going to say Damian Lillard.
We're talking about more nepotism now. Just different nepotism. Steph Curry's brother-in-law.
That is true.
It's the future recruiting pitch.
Next name, Stanley Johnson.
No.
Next name.
I like him, but not for the Bucks.
No.
Next name, Derek Jones Jr.
I thought about that. Feels very... Again, if we're going to project stuff onto Adrian Griffin, it's like, those long limbs, that athleticism might be interesting. I don't know if he can play basketball at all still at this point.
He can play. He can't shoot, but he can play.
I don't know what is fine. He as a player though.
I can't work it out.
Athletic.
That's not good enough.
He maybe should play another sport.
He's probably good like a lot. He'd
be so good at volleyball.
He's got really long
Derek
arms.
Jones Jr., do you want to play volleyball with me?
Do you want to be an Olympic high jumper? I feel like you might be good at that.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Airplane mode.
Yeah.
Airplane mode. I said Dario Saric, Jalen McDaniels, Thomas Bryant. Drew Eubanks.
Yeah, he does exist. We've reached that portion of the names.
He's better. He's a better center than Nerlens Noel.
George Hill.
I did see his name as a free.
Just no. It seems like they could easily have to do that because the options are so bad, and it's just like stop doing the year on year. I don't care.
I know. I agree with you.
Don't do it to George again, too. Like it's like the Wesley Matthews thing. It's like don't bring the guy back only to have to trade him again at some point. It's just let's just leave him be.
Taj Gibson.
Is he still an NBA player?
Yeah.
He not retired? Seriously?
He was on the Wizards last year.
Yeah.
Is he 35 now?
38.
38?
I think Rohan's leading in on the bit.
DeAndre Jordan.
Did you guys see my Twitter poll today?
No,
but tell me more about it, please.
Should the Bucks acquire this player? Turns 28 before the season, fresh off a postseason, averaging 11.6 points, 2.2 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and 0.8 turnovers. Shot 46% from the field and 48% from three. And they can for sure acquire this player.
It's Dylan Brooks. Is it?
No, it's Grayson Allen.
It is Grayson Allen.
Oh.
And I tricked 80% of Bucks fans who cannot stop including this guy in trades for the shittiest, least inspiring wings ever into saying they should get him. He had a good playoffs.
He did.
I'm not in a rush to trade
You showed them,
anyone.
Ty.
I did.
You showed them.
I feel like I did. It's a good moment for me. People figured it out pretty fast, but 79% of voters.
I'll trade him if the right trade comes along. See you later,
yeah.
Grace. I'm not actively shopping him, but I would be asking teams. Would you like a Grayson? What would you give us for a Grayson?
Yeah, that's fine. But to be clear, I'm not saying he's untradeable, but I keep seeing we could send Grayson and Bobby Portis for John Collins. I'm actually good. I don't want to do that. I
would have sent Bobby for John Collins.
But then the money
if they
doesn't
could have made that work. No, if they could have made it work, I would have.
I would have sent a sleeve of Mentos for John Collins.
The Hawks would have taken it.
He was traded for Smarties. Good Lord.
I've seen too many trades where it's just like, here's a random other wing player. And it's like, cool, I think Grayson's probably better.
Well, yeah, but that's also what you've got to take with that, and this is the reality for the Bucks. They don't have many tradable players, many tradable salaries.
I'm not saying don't trade him.
He's going to. If I was starting, who am I going to trade? You're starting with Bobby and Grayson, and you're like, might have to trade Pat. It's like they're the only. That's how you're making deals.
Again, I understand that. I am on board with that. There are some trades where that's interesting. I don't think you should trade Bobby and Grayson just to trade them. I just think I've seen too many that are just purely I don't think that player is actually better. It doesn't help you win more.
I get the impulse though, because of how last season ended, and because the avenues to improvement are so limited.
Yeah, but just make sure the trade actually makes you better and isn't just shuffling deck chairs, on a newsworthy ship.
I think too an important point to make is that if you combine 2 or 3 players, whether it's Bobby, Grayson, Pat, those are more bullets than you're spending in trades, and therefore it's harder to do it where you're not taking from the spine of the team, and that's where we're threading a very delicate needle right now.
Yeah, I would want the player who comes back to have a case to close games if I'm trading both of those guys.
Oh, agreed. I'm not. I think though that's where we're not talking about a guy that's, I don't know. I think it would be very uninspiring to be like, let's get a guy that's going to be a deadline guy, a Bojan. Let's use Bojan for.
I'm out on both of them. You could use either of them. They both work financially.
But those are going to be guys that are going to be okay. They're going to be good every 2 or 3 years. They're going to be trade bait, and let's try to drive up the price. And it's like, I don't know.
I'm not trading him for Bojan. I'm not trading him for Bogdan. I'm not trading him for Hunter.
Bogdan.
None of them.
I'm not trading him for those kind of guys. But again, what I will say, Jordan, your analogy is you're kind of spending 2 bullets there. We're approaching the time where what are you saving bullets for? I
That's not a knife. This is a knife. No, sorry. I meant to do Sean Connery and The Untouchables. Who brings a knife to a gunfight? I don't know why he made him Australian.
I honestly, he's got the worst Irish accent ever in Untouchables. So you going that way was interesting. If the Bucks,
Sean Connery was an actor, most known for playing James Bond. Yeah,
it's called We Hit.
That let's not bring James Bond
I thought his most known role was in LXG.
What's that?
Gee, Leagues of Extraordinary.
I thought that's what he's most known for.
Have you seen that movie?
Rohan,
can we keep moving? Can we please?
That's what it's called. It's called LXG. I'm not.
Who calls it LXG?
Oh my goodness! Here, am I gonna have to?
Oh my goodness! Says the guy who didn't know Sean Connery was James Bond.
I knew that.
Oh, you just thought he was better known for LXG.
What it's literally called on the poster.
Why do you acknowledge?
I don't think a lot of people know what the poster.
Oh, he's got receipts. That's a poster.
This is
that
like
a real poster?
This is like
Anyway,
the only old music you knew was In Excess. Like this makes no sense that you have this knowledge on demand. But every other film, never heard.
I believe that is. I will say it is noteworthy for the fact that I believe that is Sean Connery's last movie.
The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, also promoted as LXG. First line of the Wikipedia.
Wow. Is it also the last line of the Wikipedia for that film? Or?
Redemption is spelled ROHAN.
Wow, nice.
Rohan.
Yeah,
I feel like I
what
could
was
just
his final film?
Snow Zardoz.
Yeah, okay. If we just get back on track for a second. I do think if the Bucks can navigate the next week, keeping Khris and Brook, it's the trade that is going to make or break them at some point is going to be trading two of those three guys or two of three guys in that type, which is really, really anticlimactic. But I do think when we get to that point, whatever that deal is, will either be the one that will deliver the Bucks another championship and maybe keep the show on the road, or that could really lead to their downfall because they just end up out of options for how to improve the team again. So whether they spend that this offseason, I don't know. But I guess that adds to your point. I would ask people to keep that in mind when looking at the kind of options of package those guys together. Because I get it's the move to make, but when that move is made, it better be the right one, and you better get multiple years out of it. It can't just be rentals.
I agree with that. I still think if they thread the second needle, thread the needle on the second apron the next 2 years, the 2024 swing for a young co-star plan is still alive. Drew on an expiring, Khris under contract, 2 future firsts, a first on draft day, 2-3 young wings on the roster, whatever
first
role players. Huh?
First on draft day?
They'll have a first to trade next year. Whatever pick. They'll have a pick.
Oh, the pick swap. That's right. It's tied with the pick swap.
Yeah, so they'll have a draft day pick and 2 future firsts because the 7-year window will get pushed back enough. So they could trade 29 and 31 if they're under the second apron. So 3 firsts, young players, like good role players, like there's something there. I still think that makes sense.
Also, not to look forward to, Schadenfreude for another team. What did New Orleans pick this year? 13th?
Well, yeah, they're not going to swap it. I mean, they don't have to.
See, New Orleans might be really bad again.
Yeah, I mean, I think
there's a lot of Zion discord. I don't know.
Wrap it up. Sorry. Wrap up the pod. We can't
I've got one last important note. Important note.
Is it a name? Is it?
Oh no.
Andre Drummond?
No, it's the Alan Moore's comic book series was known as LOEG.
Oh boy.
So I don't know whoever in marketing went to LXG. Just completely disregarded spelling, decorum, decency. Who knows? Have you seen the film, Ron?
No.
Why did that come to mind? Where did that poll even come from?
My mind is a strange place.
Were you even alive when it was in theaters? When was that movie made?
Yeah, 2003.
2000. Oh, it was 3?
That's a no then, right? Ron wasn't
barely
alive,
sentient.
I was alive. Give me a break. Yeah, I don't know. I have random knowledge.
I would love if Ron was like, yeah, actually, that was the first movie I ever saw in theaters.
I think the first movie I
had the poster on my
Finding Nemo. It was Finding Nemo, I think.
Oh, that's a good movie. Yeah. I mean, it makes me feel old as shit, so let's wrap up. But
okay, if you guys are still hanging around here 2 hours later, props to
you. Vogie just hit a homer against the Brewers.
That's unfortunate.
Sorry, I think it's VXG.
Thank you for listening to this crossover GSPN episode. Make sure you check out gspn.info for all our links. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening to this, whether that's on your podcast platform of choice, where you should leave a 5-star rating and review, or on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed there. Like I said earlier, check out gspn.info for all our links. We will have you covered for free agency starts this Friday. We will have you covered in some way or another. Make sure again that you subscribe so that you do not miss anything that comes. Hopefully it's Khris and Brook re-signing to new deals, but we shall see. Pod random, and we will talk to you next time.